مشاهدينا مرحبا بكم في حوارات السياق. حظر وزير التربية الفرنسي ارتداء العباءة والقمصان الطويلة في المؤسسات التعليمية في بلاده لأنه يعبر عن انتماء ديني في بيئة دراسية حسب قوله. موقف وزير التربية الفرنسي وجد دعما من الحكومة الفرنسية وخاصة من الرئيس الفرنسي إيمانويل ماكرون الذي يدعو بدوره إلى الحزم في تطبيق الحظر. للمزيد من المتابعة تنضم إلينا إليزابيث موتيه الكاتبة في ساندي تيليغراف. أستاذة مرحبا بك معنا. لماذا اتخذت فرنسا قرار حظر العباية؟
The French law of 2004 provided for complete neutrality in French schools. That is to say, nobody is supposed to wear any kind of religious department's sign, and that can be a Jewish kippah, that can be a cross for a Christian, that can be a scarf or any kind of Muslim garment, and that is so that children until they reach the age of 18, where they have majority in France, have a complete neutrality in their teaching. You are allowed to wear a cross and a abaya, anything at university, because by that time you're past 18 and that is legal. Your teachers are not allowed because they are servants of the state, and therefore they are supposed to be neutral. But that is something very specific that has to do with teaching children and adolescents in France.
ذكرت أن القانون سن منذ 2004. لماذا فرضه الآن؟
I think because the abaya had not appeared yet. It's something that's extremely recent in France. It hadn't been seen, otherwise it would have been mentioned. And again, it is something that is happening in, I think, the cases of people who were wearing an abaya and would not take it out is 76. On the first day of the enforcement of the law. So it's a small evident incident, but it's also something that could lead to much more activism, and that's why lines were added to what was already a law, so that it would also provide for this new garment that nobody has seen in France before.
هل يندرج هذا القرار تحت خانة الإسلاموفوبيا كما ذهب البعض؟
No, of course I don't agree, because we are in a country where almost 10% of the people are Muslim. They are French citizens. They have mosques. They practice. You have lots of authorities that welcome people for the, at the time of the Eid and stuff like that. It's not Islamophobia. It is the notion of neutrality. Neutrality is one of the central tenets of French education. It is one of the central tenets of the French revolution. The French Revolution was partly waged against the Catholic Church, so it's not as it was not Catholicophobia either. It's the notion of neutrality. It's not something that is sort of is being used as something to I would say discriminate against people, but it certainly is something that says you will not start a religious activism in schools because that is not the place for it.
لكن الأمر مرتبط بالحرية. الكاتب والصحفي التركي مصطفى أيكول قال: في إيران وأفغانستان تأمر الشرطة الدينية النساء بارتداء الملابس الإسلامية. في فرنسا بشكل أكثر اعتدالا تأمر الشرطة العلمانية النساء بخلع الملابس الإسلامية. هل تتفقين مع هذه المقارنة؟
It's a false equivalence, and it is being used by specific extremist Islamist groups who do not represent most French Muslims. Otherwise, there would be far more incidents in the schools. But it's being used specifically to sort of make this as a freedom of expression. First of all, I would like to know what 8-year-old or 10-year-old girl wants to be dressed in abaya. And second, again, it is a question, you want to wear it at home, fine. You want to wear it in the street, well, you're allowed to, it's not forbidden. You are not going to wear it at school. Whereas in Afghanistan, we've seen and in Iran, we've seen all those women demonstrating because they didn't want to wear those clothes, and they were obliged to wear those clothes. So it's not at all the same thing.
القرار طبق في الأمس في أكثر من 500 مؤسسة، والنتيجة كانت أن 61 فتاة عادوا إلى بيوتهم لأنهن رفضن تطبيق القرار. هل هذا يعزلهم أكثر عوض دمجهم في المجتمع؟
Well, what I'm saying is I would bet that those children were actually sent back to a home where they wanted them to wear those abayas. But there is really a problem, which is that, as you said, it's 61 people. It's not a lot. What is worrying the French authority is the risk of contagion and the idea that it's going to be used against the French state to say we want to be separatists. And that is not the way France works. It's a society in which we have this motto for the nation, which is liberté, égalité, fraternité, or sororité. And really the idea that if you do not stem this now, it will happen more and more. And I can see that it's being used by people who want to attack the French state and to say, you're Islamophobic. I don't know, how else we can say this than to say that we've got Muslim teachers, we've got Muslim soldiers, we've got Muslim policemen. We had Muslim policemen who were killed by the killers of Charlie Hebdo in 2015, and they are part of the nation, and separating them from the nation is wrong.
القرار طبق في أكثر من 500 مدرسة. ما طبيعة المدارس التي تم اختيارها، وهل يغلب عليها عرق معين أو ديانة معينة؟
I think the schools chose themselves because in France, unlike in other countries, the education system is all sort of nationwide, and it depends from the Ministry of Education, and Gabriel Attal is the Minister for Education. And so what they did is they had feedback from the principals of the schools who said, we now have those kids coming in abayas. And that's how the schools chose themselves, so to speak.
هل للقرار علاقة بتوسع نشاطات الجماعات المتجددة وزيادة تأثيرها على الجالية المسلمة؟
I would say that we've had, as you know, lots of examples of extremism in France, and it takes few people to create a complete disaster. It takes a few dozen people to create terrorism. It doesn't, you don't need to have many of those. And I'm not even talking about terrorism, but we're talking about an atmosphere in which essentially there's a negation of what French civilization and the French nation is. And this is why people worry. I don't think people are more extremist today than they were 10 years ago. I don't think they're more extremist than they were 20 years ago. Before that, it hadn't appeared so much. But as you know, we've had a great deal of instances in which increasingly a small number of people saw themselves as not belonging to the French nation. And the French attitude, which I think is reasonable, is if you have a French passport, if you live in France, if you are part of French society, you can't say, look, I don't want to obey your law. And I'm pretty sure that in the UAE, you couldn't say, look, I'm a foreigner, I don't have to obey your law. I think it's normal for any country to react like this.
هناك من يتساءل عن الإجراءات التي يفترض أن لها الأولوية في هذا السياق، مثل المدارس الإسلامية في فرنسا والتي تسيطر عليها جماعات إسلاموية تنفذ أجندتها المتطرفة.
I agree. We have started. We have lots of people working on it. We have something like 18,000 people who call in French fichier S, which means that they're on lists called the S lists. And these are people who could be a danger to the country. And most of them are for left-wing and Islamist extremism, although we also have, unfortunately, right-wing ones. But yes, no, we are watching it. One thing is not the other. But if we go back to children, what is wrong with giving to children a few hours every day in which their life is with other French children and they understand how it works and they interact without any kind of dividing sign? That is truly the spirit of the 2004 law, and the entire nation, left and right, is in agreement on it.
نعم، لكن الموضوع أثار جدلا بين معسكر اليمين ومعسكر اليسار في فرنسا. هل يعد هذا تغولا على الحرية الشخصية كما يقول اليسار؟
If you take the French Socialist Party, if you take the French Communist Party, if you take half the France Insoumise, you will find people who are in complete agreement with the government on this. And then you will find one part of the hard left, no part of the hard right, who are in agreement. I mean, again, you have, I'm sure we could find polls, and I should have come with some, but the immense majority of the country is in favor of this law, honestly. And again, the idea is to make people understand that this is to bring the children, all children, into the same system, and then they can have their own beliefs. And I find it very significant, once again, that at university you can wear a headscarf. At university you can make your choices because you're a major, and it's your decision. This is only for schools until the age of 18.
جريدة فرنسية كتبت أن القرار اتخذ للتغطية عن أزمات أخرى في البلاد متعلقة بقطاع التعليم، تحديدا أزمة تعيين المدرسين. هل تتفقين؟
I think it's not the only reason, but it certainly is a reason, because these are politicians, and whenever they can, lead people's eyes to look at something different than what really is bothering them, they will take it. I think both things can be true.
أستاذة إليزابيث موتيه، شكرا جزيلا لك للمشاركة معنا في حوارات السياق.
Thank you so much.
مشاهدينا، شكرا على طيب المتابعة. إلى الملتقى.